unless there's other comments that want to be made in regard to it.
So if I read everybody correctly, then the involvement of other departments is going to be rather limited, but use them as a resource if we need be for the reasons that were mentioned. So, that covers the city policy on it.
There's one, excuse me, Mike, but there's one thing in that policy that Jen prepared for us that I think has to come out. Let me see, under the heading established timeline. The final bullet point, provide recommendation of final candidate for the finance budget and personnel.
Yeah, I realized when I reread that won't apply in this case. What we would look for is introductions.
Yeah.
As that comes forward.
I reacted to it and looked it up, 6213, parenthesis 3. It's a simple declarative sentence. The board shall appoint the chief of police and the fire chief, period. So we know what our responsibilities are pretty clearly. You know how hypersensitive I am. That kind of thing.
I was expecting that.
I do appreciate what Acting Chief Zepps has done in this document. It's the final one in the bunch, isn't it? Final. Anyway, that's the clearest articulation of the position that I've ever seen. So I appreciate that, and I can tell it myself, but I wanted the group to know.
Good here. By the way, he had asked if he felt that, or I felt that he should be involved in this discussion or anything. And he's gracefully understands that he could possibly be a candidate, so it'd be a conflict if he was involved. But for his expertise, other than what's already been provided.
Yeah, well, he did this in the role as another quick comment. The assessment group that you listed, you've got that list.
Yep.
That same list ought to be a recruitment group. Those guys should be called and say, give us the name of 1 or 2 or 3 people that you think would fit the position we have open. Anyway. Does that make sense to you?
Yes and no. Yes, from the fact that they would have the professional contacts. No, from the perspective that, hey, Dr. King was trying to steal somebody from us.
They know better than that. I mean, they know what we're doing.
Snooze, they lose. Snooze, they lose.
Yeah, right. You know, and it's for them, it's maybe a good way to get rid of somebody.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the recruitment policies that were presented? Information that you need, or? Okay.
But we do need to talk about whether we want to do it all internally or whether we want some.
Yeah, that's where we're gonna.
All right.
Then the number 5 and the continuation of what we've already discussed. Do you have any input on that, Jim?
It really kind of the next on my list was for you to determine whether or not you want to use an external recruiting body or if you want to utilize internal HR resources for the recruitment. And so I think there's going to be pros and cons to both sides. So that's really the decision that needs to be made, and once you make that decision, we'll walk through what the process would be if you choose an external recruiter, what the process would be if you move it.
Okay. Open the floor for discussion on preferences for external or internal recruitment selection process.
Mike?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Having been through a process in which the commission ran the whole show, don't go there. It's time consuming, it's stressful. We don't know the full ins and outs. And I know when we were doing that, some of the arguments we had were over how do we post this, where do we post it? I think that's something best left to the professionals.
Okay.
And I think within our current environment, not just locally, but nationally, I think the ins and outs on the posting and discrimination and so forth is best handled by the professionals.
So noted. We do have a professional in our presence, but I know what you're talking about.
Right.
But I've been involved, if I can add to the discussion here, in a process where we've had outside sources helping us. And my only impression of the whole process was that they were simply, it was another community that they have a contract with. And when all was said and done, it was basically boilerplate, changed the names and not a whole lot of, maybe we got a bad company that we worked with, but I was not the least bit impressed with the outcome of that group that was here to help us. And
No,
I had a bad taste in my mouth for that.
Yeah, so I recognize that's a potential. So if you're looking at
We looked at 4 or 5 of them.
acquiring an executive search firm, we've got to do our own executive search on the search firm.
The advantage of having a professional would be that they maybe have the resources that we don't have for recruiting.
Right.
They've met Joe Schmidt from Timbuktu, who didn't make it at a certain place, but was a shining star, and they could tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, Marshall's looking. Perhaps you'd want to apply with Marshall. And we'll, yeah, where did I heard that before?
Yeah. No. The job before the one when I came here, and then the headhunter refused to speak to me after I agreed to come here. I was in a job that I'd been in for 25 years. I was in good shape. He had done a president search for our campus. At some point in conversation with him, I had said, if you ever see anything you think I'd fit, let me know. That gave him permission to search for me, because otherwise this contract city couldn't for 5 years out of that campus. Well, he sent me stuff from time to time, and he sent me something, and I looked at it and said, no, I don't want to do that. And I got a call from him, and he said, Andy, I haven't got your application letter for. And I said, he said, Andy, look, I know you, I know the place, there is a match. If you don't send me at least an application letter so I can get you in the pot, you're going off my list. So I sent him a letter. I faxed it the next morning. I flew to Columbus, Ohio for what they call an airport interview, but it was downtown. And it was the most amazing experience of my life. And when I left, I told Chris, I have no interest in this. I just want to stay on Ellen's list. When I got off the plane, I said to her, if I can get that job, I'm going to take it. He was right. There was a match. If we can get an outside firm who recruits for us, I want an outside firm. If we get an outside firm like the last one we had, it was a waste of money, an absolute waste of money. I don't know how we find that. I don't know how we pick one, but a headhunter should have here's old fashioned talk, a Rolodex that he goes through and says, oh, yep, now this guy I know is not interested in going anywhere. He's perfectly happy where he is, but I'm going to get him to apply because he would be perfect. There are issues there, and that's the kind of thing he deals with. He's the guy. That's what I want, if we can get it. If we can't get it, if we can't get a recruiter, then Jen, you know how to do it better than anybody else anyway. You know, and I don't think you have the kind of network that a recruiter ought to have.
And you likely will want to have, if you go externally, you want to have a specialty recruiter, somebody who focuses specifically on protective services to make sure that they have that net in order to capture the groups.
Yeah, I think the previous experience taught us that if we do go with an outside firm, that we need to emphasize that this is recruitment.
Yeah.
And the rest would be to coordinate the assessment and the selection. But recruitment is number one here.
Jen, you would know this. Could we put out an RFP, look at the returns, and say, oh no, this guy looks pretty good. Let's check it out, do some checking and find that that's what they really do well, and say, okay. Or we look at the 5 or 6 we get and say, none of them look like they're really good, and keep it inside.
Well, maybe it's best if we kind of walk through what that external process would be. If you go with an outside recruiter, and then we can walk through that, and if that meets your needs, and we can start down that path with an RFP and those types of things. I'll walk you through kind of what those steps are, and then you do always have an option if you go with an external consultant. You can choose to write in the RFP that you have the right to reject any and all candidates, that you don't necessarily have to choose. If you can't find what you want, then you know, lengthen your search time, but then you could look, you know, we could see what we could do internally to meet that need. That's an option. Or you could go back and do a second RFP.
I guess something like that is what I would favor, but it's up to the rest of the group.
Okay. Would you like me to walk you through that process?
Yeah, if you want.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did put a sample RFP in the packet. So the first thing would be to develop an RFP, and we probably, this is an older one. It's one that we used from Fire. I think in the last packet that I provided, there is also another one from, I think, the city of Delavan that located that may have worked as well. So we'd have to spend some time, either a subcommittee or in this group, to walk through the details of that RFP, maybe put together a sample, and you guys could adjust it as you see fit. And kind of the key things that we'd have to look at would be a target date to issue the RFP. We would want to determine what that timeline is once the RFP is out. Typically 3 weeks would be the minimum in terms of getting responses back from an organization. There's a cost piece, obviously, to that, and usually from what I've looked at in preparing for this is anywhere between 20 and 30% of the first year's wages is what you can expect. So depending on, you know, if you look at midpoint of this position, it's about $104,000. And so you have to plan that it's going to be probably in that range of 20 to 30,000, could be higher, depending on where your RFPs come back. So we would have to work with finance, budget, and personnel to be able to get that approval of budgeting done, unless there's funds that you already have available to be able to handle that. Other than that, it would be determining the list of where we want to post the RFP. I've done a little bit of legwork on that in case that was the route you wanted to go. It would be determining a list of agencies that we want to notify. Some of the more prominent ones that I've been able to find are McGrath, Springstead, Baker Tilly, the International Association of Police Chiefs, but there's more. So we could look to see, you know, we want to at least target some if we can. We want to determine who would be the review team for the proposal coming back, how you would select it in regard to, you know, do you want Zoom interviews, do you want on-site interviews, do you want presentations, what are you looking for? And there would be key pieces that you would build into that RFP if you want to look at, you know, having a kind of an intake session where you get kind of key attributes from this group, key attributes from, you know, other parties, whether that's internal to the city or external. Could be feedback that you want from the police department in general in terms of what they think they need for a chief. So there's options for that.
Key attributes.
Key attributes. So those things that are outside the job description. So when you're looking at, if you really need someone in this position that has financial acumen, that would be something that you'd look at. It's broadly written in the job description, but what are those key things that this group really thinks are going to be most important for the person coming in, and what skill set do they need?
Okay.
Recruitment.
Right. So in looking at that, other pieces would be, again, determining that selection process, completing references, and, again, we could look at the references, whether we're looking for, a significant number, if we're looking for follow-up. Ideally, I think in these cases, the best thing that you can do is you can see if they can give you names of people that they've placed in the positions, only because then you talk directly to the person that has the experience with them. I think that's always the best way to go, rather than just saying the city worked with me and they were great. We want to get that too, but the actual individuals I always think are a little bit better. Finalize the agreement, and then, again, we'd go from there. Then they would walk through whatever their process is with you, and you'd make that final selection and determination. And, you'd still have to determine who's going to be involved in interviews and who's going to, what the time frame is and what you want that to look like, whether it's presentations or panel interviews or different assessments. So that's all still things that you have to work with, but you'd work directly with the recruiter for that. So, kind of the summary.
Any ideas, input?
Let us assume we're going in this direction. You check with some of the cities in Wisconsin, say La Crosse, Eau Claire, Missouri Point, Rapids, Appleton, Green Bay, Ashwaubenon, whether they've used recruiters for this type of position, and find out what their experience has been.
We can. I'd probably work with Pat Zepps for that, only because I believe he's part of that organization, the Wisconsin Police Chiefs Organization, and then try to get some additional feedback that way. I think that'd probably be the best route to go. The other thing is I've looked online just to see who's recruiting, and there's a number of vacant chief positions out in Wisconsin right now, and then also some in Utah that were recently filled. So Wauwatosa, I think I just saw Ripon, I think there's New Holstein, a number of them that are open.
I noticed on the list that was included of recruiters that were approached in 2000, whether that's 18 or 13. You got Minnesota, Illinois, Idaho, Wisconsin, back to Illinois, and then, one group that doesn't give recruitments. Does it make any difference where they're from? I mean, assuming they're qualified, does it make any difference to the commission whether they're from, for instance, Idaho or Washington State? You can consider the distance from us.
I think it depends on their reach, what their past experience has been. If they obviously, part of the process of selecting a consultant or a recruiter would be, probably have to have a face-to-face interview with them or something. That's got to be considered as far as bringing on what it's going to cost us or anything. But I think part of the package that they want to provide to us is how far-reaching their experience has been. If they're heavy in Wisconsin, then maybe it's something we want to consider above somebody who does a lot of work out in Wyoming. But it's or North Dakota, but it's something that we can ask specifically for them to provide in the material that they give us when we're reviewing them as a possible contract or something with us.
I think this raises another question. How far out do we want to do a search? Do we want to do North Central region? Do we want to do one that's east of the Mississippi? Do we want to do a national search?
Yeah, that's another item for us to discuss. I'd be open to input on that. If we open it up at all to outside, we just plain have to open it up. I mean, you don't know what you're gonna get from, maybe somebody wants to move to good old, to North Country from Nebraska, but he might be a damn good police chief and we wouldn't want to miss out on it. But it's,
I'm in favor of the widest search that we can do.
a wide search. I mean, who knows what you're gonna get. You know, there's a lot of reasons why somebody would want to. They'd wanna, obviously they'd wanna have to live here, but for other reasons, they may be in a department where they're stifled. There's no room for advancement, all kinds of different reasons that somebody would wanna look outside. Maybe they're from Chicago and they wanna live in a place where they don't have to worry about locking their car. And Central Wisconsin's a little bit more comfortable place to raise kids. I mean, for all the good reasons. It's, I think if we open it up, we have to open it up. I don't know if we can limit it at all. It can only be limited to the reach of their recruitment. And I'm leaning more towards wanting to open it up to a recruiter to work with us because of that network that they might have. But Andy's example of,
Well,
they're waiting on somebody. I mean, they've got people that they know that are looking.
I would want to be sure that they have experience truly recruiting.
Yeah.
If they don't have that experience, if we can't find anybody, I'm perfectly confident that Jen and her resources can do a good job too. You know, I'm reminded of one of the best bosses I ever had. He said to me once, Andy, don't say no before you have to. And there is a kind of feel of that here. I don't know why we would choose not to go as far as we need or can, and then say no when we get the applications written in crayon. I mean, you know, that's when you say no.
Well, and keep in mind with that search, you know, the search parameters have broadened, you know, due to the way things are posted now. So if you're posting, you can, through the recruiter, choose where you want that position posted if you wanted. So from the standpoint of, you know, national, you could post with the International City County Management Association. You could post with the International Police Chiefs Association. You could make sure that you've got a diverse workforce by working with, you know, there's different national organizations that are minority based, that are Wisconsin based, that are Minnesota based, that are Iowa based. You can post to all of those, and any recruiter is going to be able to give you that information in terms of where you kind of want to draw from, and then keeping in mind that that branch can open all the way up by going through those international organization-based postings.
Somebody a little bit ago said Baker Tilly. Baker Tilly's a national outfit, right? It would make a difference in my head. Baker Tilly has got to reach as long as you want them to have. I don't know that they'd be interested in helping us. It may be that we're too small or too, you know, local or whatever. But an outfit like that, if they really put the muscle in it, has a lot of resource for recruiting and for, you know, their Rolodex would be huge. I wish I knew better.
Can you explain the process for requests for proposals? I mean, what network you would send, like, invitations to provide proposals?
Sure. Well, so a couple of things that we would do is we would, I'm not certain on how all of them have typically worked in the past, but in regard to the RFP, you know, again, I think we would look at, you know, some of those bigger named organizations or organizations that we've either used in the past or have experience with, as well as more of the broader scenarios, but we'd also post it with like the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. We could look at some larger organizations to have that RFP posted. So it'd be on, posted with the internet, but that might be something, you know, that we'll have to just do a little bit more research on in terms of how broad, you know, we can go with putting that RFP out.
The reason I ask that is that typically, say the Public Works, they send out RFPs for projects. And they're selective if they've had bad experiences with one company or another. Obviously, they don't send a request to them. But when you open it up like that, you have a possibility of that company that we've had bad experience with in the past would submit something. Obviously, we're not obligated, but I just had to ask the question because there's certainly, and for the life of me, I can't remember what position it was for that we had that outfit last time. I hope it wasn't McGrath. The husband and wife team.
It could be McGrath.
Could be. But I wouldn't consider that company again in the future.
Well, and I think,
Disappointed with them.
I think what you'll want to do is establish criteria for, specifically what you're looking for, and then have that criteria to be able to review those proposals with, so that you know. I mean, and things can change. Again, I'm not aware of the experience that you had in the past, but we've also used McGrath for compensation, and the experience was great. So, it depends on what you're looking for. So
I think the backbreaker is going to be the recruitment. I mean, when I'm looking at proposals that we get from people, the recruitment is going to weigh very heavy. Their experiences and their resources that they have available to them. But they get off track or anything, do we?
no, I think so. Based on what I'm hearing from you with an external recruiter, I think the first step would be to, I can pull together a draft for you. That draft can then go to this committee to review and to adjust and to adapt in terms of what you want included in that RFP. And then once that's in place, again, I do have to do a little bit of checking in terms of what the process is in terms of getting that approved to be sent out based on costs and what have you. So. And I don't know where the optional powers fall into that. We'll have to look at that.
And to reiterate, if we can find an organization that has a strong history of successful recruiting, I think going outside would make sense. If we're not satisfied with that, I want to be able to say no and work with you and whoever we can find to move forward. Does that make sense to everybody?
Okay. We'll move forward with that part of it.
Okay.
Anybody, Steve, got any input on it?
My question is, if you open this up nationwide for applications for the employee versus trying to get a company to do the recruiting for us, could we limit where that company is from geographically? And would that be a benefit? Cost factor as far as them coming here to meet with us, or the Rolodex idea of contacts they have, well, they're going to be limited geographically to the locations they're from if it extends way beyond the scope of central United States, basically. I don't know if people will want to come to Marshfield from, let's say, someplace in Washington State or Virginia or whatever. And they're going to be, that company's going to be limited as to how, or in that Rolodex, so to speak. Are we wasting money?
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things to keep in mind, so if you were looking at a recruiter that has a good history and they're based in California, their network is probably going to be more based in that area.
Right.
And I'm not saying that it doesn't expand a lot further than that, but that likely would be the case if you're recruiting in particular regions. And that's usually what I've seen from a recruitment standpoint is, the recruiter would be assigned to a region, and then if they've got a candidate from another area that's looking to get into that region, then those recruiters would connect with each other.
It depends on who you get it's, I went to a summer conference, an invited only thing. And they paid the freight for 2 weeks at resort. And one of the things they said is we have 4 recruiting firms to whom we give a list of names and addresses of our participants. If you don't want your name sent to them, let us know and we'll take it off. But otherwise, we consider all of you to be potential higher ed administrators. And if you're looking for work, these are, for a change, these are 4 excellent search firms. The one that I worked with really in 2 positions was based in Washington, D.C. And they placed more private higher ed institution presidents than any other search firm in the country. Their Rolodex was national. Their headhunter was on planes all the time. I don't know when he was home. It depends who you get. Some are, and that was a firm, for example, that specialized in private colleges and universities. If you wanted a president at a land-grant university, you didn't go to that. But geographically, it was nationwide. And they did something, they sometimes did public universities. I got a call about 7 o'clock one night at home, and the head recruiter said, "Andy, can you come down to the Radisson? We need a member of the search committee." I said, "Yeah." So I go down, and the owner of the firm from Washington had just come in, and we went upstairs to talk to the primary candidate. He would have been president if the guy in Washington wasn't doing his due diligence and found that he had misused money in a grant in Taiwan. And so went up, and it was the headhunter's job to tell the candidate he wasn't going to be selected, he wasn't going to be considered because of this bad record. He was president of Pittsburgh State in Kansas. He lost that job as a consequence of this. So the recruiter did more than just, a hell of a reputation. He was a wonderful guy. He had just got his fingers in the wrong place. And another candidate for president who plagiarized his talk. Every candidate gave actually an hour-long talk. And one of the faculty listened to him and said, I've read this someplace before. And he went and he found it, and it was word for word. They videoed it, and he watched the video. It was word for word off of a published piece. He just stole it. It was the headhunter who cleared him away. But in both cases, that headhunter had 2 really fine candidates behind him. And one of those, in each case, was selected to be president. The guy who plagiarized his speech, within the year, had found another job as president of the Boy Scouts of America. I always thought that was interesting. Anyway, headhunters are powerful, powerful people in the way our world works. They place important people. If they do it right, they can make up. In the university world, You gotta have the right president for the campus to succeed. And those are the people, if they do their job right, who give you that person. Find that person. And
weed out the bad apples.
yeah. I'm telling stories, but maybe they're instructive. I'm talking to the headhunter who got me to move and who found jobs for me that I turned down to come here. I was talking to him, he said, do you know Greg Lacey? And I said, sure I do. I know him very well. Our offices were within 30 feet of each other for years. He said, well, Greg is the finalist for a position at a private college in somewhere. And I said, good for him, good for him. He said, you know, he's a special guy. He gave up working for a whole year to get his son back. His wife sort of kidnapped the kid and took him somewhere. Greg had to find the kid and bring him back and take care of him. But he gave up work for a year to do that. It was fine, you know. And that was a second marriage and so on. And I said, no, that's not a second marriage, that's his third. What do you mean, third? Well, he told the recruiter about 2 of his marriages, but he didn't tell him about his first one. And this was a Catholic college. Well, okay, you can get away with 2, but 3 is 1 too many. The recruiters, you talk about finding the right guy, finding the good people. They work pretty hard at trying to find the right people. They really do, because if they do well for you, you're going to talk well about them. Anyway, enough.
Question about recruiters. Aside from looking for a candidate for us, do they also make inquiries, however this would be done, as to what the spouse would think? The reason I pose this is that when Chief Cleveland left, one of our prime candidates was from St. Louis, Missouri suburb. Very capable gentleman. Once his wife saw Marshfield by
Talk to the recruiters up at the clinic about that.
So I don't know whether that is something which is out of line.
I would, again, I'm not certain, I've not been in that role, so I'm not certain, how they look at that. From my perspective, recruiting, marital status is not something that we consider as part of the recruitment process. It's under one of the protected categories, so that is not something that we would focus on.
Just for the check on it.
We had hired a city administrator some time back for a short period of time. And part of the recruitment was the 3 or 4 possible candidates for that were invited to the city, and we took them out, wined and dined them, showed them the city, and the spouse as well. And he ended up taking the job, but she didn't come with him. And like I said, it was a short-term employment, but she made up her mind she's not coming to Marshall. So and again, but that didn't have any effect really on his abilities and the reasons that we hired him and his background and everything. But it didn't have anything to do with him leaving either. I mean, I guess that we're hiring the individual.
Yeah, I mean,
they have their house in order, then that's fine. As long as it doesn't affect the job once they're hired, it's not a problem.
And a recruiter would be skilled at what they can and can't ask, and what should be included. So.
My question is, with the amount of money that we're willing to pay a chief, are we realistic in looking beyond or hoping to get someone from a larger community to come in here? Or are we limiting ourselves? Are we, because the city is primarily white, are we not going to get colored, black or whatever candidates to apply? Similar to the wife turning down the thing. And I don't have answers in my own mind as to are we, how far should we go as far as nationwide looking for a candidate? Because realistically, they aren't going to come here.
Well, you know, we promote diversity always. And so we're equal opportunity. We would look at diversity, and we would ensure that through this recruitment process, you would work with your recruiter and ensure that you're looking at a diverse candidate pool. And you know, as you go through that process, you know, the right candidate will emerge.
Okay.
Right now, I think if you look at the police situation across the country, east to west, north to south, there have got to be a lot of people out there that want to move and want to get out. Sheriff Parks mentioned they recently hired somebody from considerably far out of state, somebody just wanted to get out here to look at some of the southeastern suburbs. You get guys coming out of Milwaukee, getting into the smaller communities. If my sister knows a sergeant up in Minneapolis, PD, wasn't for the fact he's a year and a half in retirement, he'd be looking for a position outside. You know, we look at guys up in Portland, Seattle, they are more than happy to get out. I think some of those people willing to travel halfway across the country just to get out of their situation. Candidates are out there.
Well, and you know, depending on what recruitment firm you choose to go to, again, you'll be able to probably dictate where you want the position posted. And there's different tools that are out there for these candidates if you're looking for people who are moving up. For example, if you go to the Wisconsin Chief of Police associations, you can actually pay to have your job posting sent to every one of their members. So you pay an extra $100 and they will actually individually email your response to each of those. That's one example. There's probably more. So there's a way to get diverse candidate pools very easily. Gordy, in response to your question in regard to the pay, part of that will be based upon what you look at for the advertising. As you go through this process, there will be an ad. There's a typical job posting, but typically if you're going with an external recruiter, you're going to get a more broad package that's going to have things like what is the median income within the city of Marshfield, what is the pay range, what is the average housing information. So all of that information is included, so they get a broader scope of what, you know, kind of how that salary would play into the cost of living in our community. So that helps.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that once we, obviously, if we move forward, I can see where we're going towards developing an RFP and selecting an RFP. Once we hire a consultant, once we hire a consultant, then a lot of the footwork and stuff is going to be based on their experiences and their processes that they have to walk through all this with us. And we'll have to fine tune it, obviously, to what we want, but they're going to come with a whole load of resources that we'll be able to take advantage of. And we'll have to, like we're talking today, we're going to end up having to talk with a possible recruiter to fill them in on exactly what we want. If they didn't pick that up somewhere in the process of hiring them or getting a contract with them.
I just don't want to lose sight that if we don't find someone that satisfies us, we're not going outside.
I agree.
Are you saying that we're going outside at all costs, that we don't want someone internally? Is that basically what you're saying?
You mean as a recruiter?
No, I meant as a candidate.
No, candidate. there may be, and again, I don't know, but there may be people in the department who are very interested in being a chief and are qualified, and we interview and decide they're the best, that's fine.
I didn't want to lose sight of that either, because very selfishly, this commission has been involved in improving the existing force, individuals in the force, to the extent that we provide education,
Yeah.
of course, their experience, and everything else, and certainly I wouldn't exclude anybody from the department. You can't guess how many people may want this position, and it's wide open to them as well as anybody else. And that was, at first I was pretty selfish about going outside looking, but then on the other hand, because we've had bad experience with outside people being hired as chief too through the years, but you don't know. It could happen to anybody, and we don't know that. And then it just, I think there are people, if they are interested, that's the point, is if there's somebody interested in the department. I'm not going to stifle them from wanting to move forward. We've helped them work their way all the way up the ladder to this point. And some of them probably aspired 10 years ago to, I'm going to do this, someday I'm going to be chief, and go for it and get through the process.
You know, the commission has paid significant dollars for some of those people to educate themselves, train, and so on. And to be honest with you, if we could find someone internally.
So possibly the first chore we have is to make it official that we want to go looking for, put out RFPs for the selection process. I would entertain a motion to that extent. It would fall under the discussion we're having. So if we want to have Jen develop some RFPs for recruitment process, is that a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, motion by Steve.
Second.
Second by Bill. Okay, that we proceed with, we're going to proceed with an outside, review of outside firms possible to be one of our consultants in this process. Yep.
Can we also note that if we don't find somebody that meets the criterion that the commission moves up, that we go internally?
Yeah.
Yes.
Any questions on the motion?
Jen, are you comfortable?
That's fine.
Okay, I'm going to do a roll call on this.
Okay. Earl,
Yes.
Henker,
Yes.
Keel,
Yes.
Bake,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes. Okay. A question I should have asked before was, if you put an RFP together and it comes to us for review, that's something we could probably add to one of our future regular meeting agendas, or would you guys prefer to have another special meeting to go through the RFP review?
I prefer a special meeting.
Okay.
I think I would too. No matter how you twist it, these things take time.
Okay.
And I'd rather not add any more than we have to.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
We're all retired, we don't have anything else to do.
And the salary is so great in this position too.
Oh, I
So-
know. Well, the salary's
Yeah.
not, but the benefits are wonderful.
Well, that's great though.
Double time for
Yeah.
special meetings. So, okay, well, I'll keep that in mind when we put meetings together for this. We'll have a special meeting to do the RFPs in the future. Is there anything else anybody wants to cover while we're here under the continuation of discussion? We've covered a lot of ground really in a short period of time here this morning. Again, it's the information that you provided, and thank you. Is there anything you think we need to do other than how we put the RFP together? That'll be the next step.
the RFP and then the legwork just to make sure that we've got the process clean in terms of getting approval to do so. So
Okay, you have a feel for everything, what we've discussed? Okay,
Jen's gonna keep us out of trouble.
my best.
thank you. Any other information that anybody needs? Or any other discussion? Hearing no objections, then adjourn.
Thank you.